Hi, this is Mark at Fun Ideas Take Two. Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and today we have two special guests on the Fun Ideas podcast who've been on before. One is Kamden Spies and one is Ben Olson. How are you two doing tonight?
Doing
Good.
great, buddy. Thank you.
All right. We did a show before a few months ago. I think it seemed like years ago, but it was only a few months ago, where we were talking about all the various artwork you've done, Ben, and Kamden's knowledge of cartoon history. I figured, well, let's do it again. So here we are. So anyway, since we last spoke, I'll start with Ben. Since we last spoke, are there any new art projects or anything that has happened in the last few months for you?
I was going to ask one question about that. So
Yeah.
Ben, you're moving to Florida?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's something. So talk about that.
I am moving the entire family, the studio, everything down to the Tampa area.
So like the whole Chuck Jones Center
Yep.
for Chicago is coming down there now?
I'll keep the center up here in Chicago, and then I'm going to start another one down there. So I'll do Chuck Jones Center, Central Florida.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's a third location there.
That is a third location. So I'll keep the one going in Chicago because I do plenty of stuff up here still.
Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to do it Florida? I was going to ask.
Lots of reasons. One is I can't stand cold weather, and why would I still stay up here? So I'm going down there. There's more opportunities down there than there are here in Illinois, and I'm kind of on an island by myself up here as far as like the art community and the guys that I know. So I've got a lot of good friends of mine that do this even much bigger than I do, and they're all down in Central Florida area. So I'm going to go powwow with those guys as well.
But do they do this?
I'm sure they do, because I interview those guys when I have to do the Chuck Jones shows.
Okay.
Well, Florida's had other studios and places before. Fleischer was down there in the late 30s, early 40s. So.
I tried to get when I've done various things, I do various things all the time. So one time I tried to get the people who ran the Florida Art Center. I said, like, they have this honors list and the Fleischers weren't on there. So I got them, somehow I tried to get them on there. And they said, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Wow. Now, I do have a question for you, Ben.
Yes.
I have a friend named Milton Knight, who is an artist and animator himself. He's been on this show also. He used to live in New York originally and then in LA. And then he had a friend that unfortunately he had a falling out with as soon as he moved there. And he's moved to Indiana. Now, my question is, what is it with like that part of the country? Why is there not like a hotbed of art in the middle of the country? Is it always around the coastal areas in this country, or what's the story on that?
Well, I think, we've got downtown Chicago has, they've got obviously in our community, we got the Art Institute, which is a phenomenal museum / school.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Contemporary, there's some cool stuff, but like we hibernate, man. For 6 to 7 months of the year, we just hibernate. Like I'm still hibernating. And I find that when I'm out on the West Coast, I love Laguna. I love that whole area, and I love that gallery district. And when I'm out there, or I'm down in St. Pete and that whole district, or like down in Sarasota, I mean, good night. I could go on the list of places when it's warmer weather and tropical stuff and people are out all the time, and you're walking in and out of galleries and it's February 2nd, it's still 80 degrees. It's a totally different vibe. And up here, like we're bundled up, we're going, again, you kind of go, you tuck in one area, you tuck in another. And I just haven't found, I do a lot of art events, and we've had over 300 and some thousand people experience our Chuck Jones Center Chicagoland events in the 4 years that we've been doing this. And that's great. And like probably the biggest, and I've only got to hang out with the dude once, was Alex Ross. And he was in the studio with his family. Super awesome guy. Like he donated some stuff to us, like his personal proofs that signed him that we could raise money for the organization and stuff.
I think you showed us to them. You showed it to us last time you were here.
Yeah. And since last time, he's given me more stuff.
Oh, wow.
He's like, go for it. So, other than him, there's not like, we don't do, like, nobody goes out. Like, we don't do stuff. But I find when I'm on the coasts, when I'm either, and like I've been to New York and stuff, and that's okay. But again, it's just not the same vibe. But when I'm down in Florida or I'm out, west, San Diego, Laguna, that kind of thing, man, it's a different thing.
Okay.
I just want to point something out about the weather thing. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, which is not not in the coast, but it's closer than you are. Why is it 25 degrees here tomorrow? So
That is a great question. Why is that? That's ridiculous. You know what? You know where it's not 25 degrees? Florida.
yeah.
No, I only lived in Florida for 4 months, and this was back in the late 90s. But I lived in the cooler months, which was October through March. And still, it was like 70, 80 degrees. I was in Panama City and then Jacksonville and then Orlando and then came back to California. But yeah, it's like it can snow in Florida, I know, but it rarely snows in Florida.
Yeah, especially down, when you get more towards Central Florida. I love, like, I don't like wearing shoes. So like I'll go barefoot or flip flops. We were just there, not too long ago, house hunting. I wore shorts and flips onto the plane. It was 20 degrees when I got out of my truck, and I didn't care because when I got off the plane, it was 80 degrees.
Oh, geez.
And shorts and flip flops made total sense. So I find the vibes different. And, obviously I got a lot of cool people up here. I know a lot of cool people, but for what I do and how I want to do it, it's just not the same. So, and the opportunities I have coming up are like, it's going to be better to be closer to the guys that I, get to hang with and stuff like that. So, and I feed off that, it's a reciprocal thing.
Okay. And then the center you're building in Florida, how is that going to differ? I mean, other than the people, are you still going to focus on Chuck Jones, or are you going to have a different focus, or?
Nope. I'm gonna open another nonprofit down there. I'll host the Chuck Jones Center, Central Florida, and then I'll replicate what I've done up here. I will replicate that down there. And we've been working with the G League for the NBA. So we have like the Windy City Bowls, and we've played 2 games now, like one in 2020, the first part like in January before everything got shut down, and then we just did one in January of 2022. And the Orlando Magic's team is in Lakeland, Florida. So I'm going to do another thing with the Windy City Bowls. We're going to do another big draw, and we're talking about doing it in both spots. So my contact up here was like, let's do Lakeland. I'm like, yes. He would like to come down to Orlando in January. I'm like, come on down. So I'm going to replicate what I'm doing up here, and I'll be able to do that down there.
Very cool. Okay.
So what part of Florida are you going to, though?
The Tampa area.
So that's way down there, like near, or no, wait, that's not, that's west of Orlando, right?
Yeah, about an hour.
That's
yeah,
right. That's
yeah.
right.
As
I have to remember because it's
went
been
to-
years since I've been in Florida. And go, it's Miami that's at the south. Yeah.
as one person who's in my class said, if you're in Florida, if you're out of Florida, you want to go to Orlando. If you're in Florida, you want to stay away from Orlando.
Yeah, I've got good buddies of mine that are in Orlando, and yeah, I've lived down there when I was interning. It's just a different thing. I want to be closer to a beach. Yeah. So like if I'm moving down there, I'm within like a 30-minute ride from hitting that sand and that water. And I like the Gulf side.
And where did you grow up? Did you grow up down there or somewhere else near a beach, or you just learned to love it?
I think I was spiritually, like my soul was born there, but I was Arkansas, then Kansas, then Oklahoma, then Texas, then Illinois, then Florida, then Illinois, and now Florida.
Wow, Arkansas! There, you can't get more landlocked than that. Wow.
Right? I was born with the shells on, and I get quite a few comments on are you from around here? Like from here? And I'm like,
yeah.
No.
Now, of all the places you've lived, where have you lived the longest then?
Here. I've lived
here.
Okay.
Okay.
I've lived here since I was 9, and I'm 40.
Okay. So that's probably why they kind of think you're a native.
Yeah. Well, no, they don't think I'm a native Illinoisan. They're because I've got all the jewelry on. I got the shells. I wear.
Oh, they think you're native in Florida then. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
California or Florida, they pick one of those 2 spots, and I'm like, sure.
Yeah. Well, you don't have any distinguished accent, for, especially not a Southern one. It's like
No.
you sound like you're from out
I moved up
California.
here when I was fourth grade. I moved up from Texas, and I had a really strong Southern accent.
Yeah, I now coming from me, whose parents are from the Midwest, I just have a basic American accent. My voice is too high.
No, yeah, you're fine. I find that no, but I lost it. By the time I was probably in junior high, my accent went away. But I had that Southern drawl when I came up. How y'all doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm total California boy, and of course, when you come up to Oregon, it's mainly transplanted Californians. So it's like, and even if you're from here, it's like they just sound like they're from California. Just the whole West Coast kind of. There's no distinctive accent. Maybe Valley Girl if you're in Southern California or something like that. But yeah, there's nothing really that distinguishes anybody from Washington, Oregon, or California. It's kind of funny.
Not like when you do the East Coast, you got that Boston, the New York accent.
Yeah, I mean it's really regional on the East Coast, just little areas, all the way down the.
It's regional down here too.
Yeah,
but I'm in the minority of people who don't have a strong accent. I just have I use a lot of Southern phrases and Southern slang, but other than that, it's not
like
much
what? Like what? Let's
like y'all.
Drop a chair. Chitlins, Amhawks. What do you typically? I'll ask both of you. This is a weird question. What do you, either of you, typically eat? Do you typically eat regional type stuff, or you just eat just general McDonald's? Whatever. Yeah.
No, like there's some specific things, right? So growing up here, for the most part, there are things that are very Chicagoan, right? And deep dish pizza is Chicagoan, right? And let me tell you, I've had those imposters all over the place. They don't make it like they do. I don't know how. I'm like, it's just a recipe. But like Giordano's is my deep dish pizza of choice. There's Lou Malnati's, right? You either have Lou's or Giordano's, and you have like the stuff downtown that's very cliche, Gino's East and stuff like that. Nah, whatever. But like Giordano's, right? You either got a beer batter crust and the buttery crust with Lou Malnati's, which I'm not as big of a fan of, or you have a flour crust, which I'm much more of a fan of, and I like their sauce better, Giordano's. So Giordano's is my jam, man. And I've tried deep dish other places, other regions.
Yeah.
No, they don't get it right. Chicago style hot dog. Now, I don't do everything on it, right? But there's one thing we don't do on a hot dog. You know what that is?
It's probably ketchup.
It is ketchup. We do ketchup.
That's a California thing. There's a hot dog chain in California called Der Wiener Schnitzel. There's even, and so they have things like a kraut dog and a mustard dog and a corn dog, of course, and they have a ketchup dog. And so that's probably where that came from. I have no problem putting ketchup on a hot dog, but I'm not a big fan of ketchup anyway, so I probably would. I tend to put mustard, but
I just cannot stand tomato. It's one of my
You see, the only thing I don't do is I don't do the relish or the onions, but I'll do the tomatoes, the pickles, the mustard, and I cannot do ketchup on a hot dog. I can't do it.
But I never knew it was a thing one way or the other until Facebook started saying that. But I mean, the other conversation going back to pizza is, pineapple on a pizza, and it's like, I don't know. It was always on a pizza. I just didn't like pineapple when I was a kid, so I didn't like it because of that. But now it's like, it's okay, but it's not my go-to. My go-to is still like pepperoni and sausage and everything. But I still like a good pineapple pizza every so often. I always say this, it's like you can put anything, you can put dog shit on a pizza, I'll probably eat it. So, but I do have to ask you this, because I don't know if I've ever eaten an official deep dish pizza, but there is a chain that's not around in Oregon, but was down in California, that claimed to be authentic, but everybody always does, called Pizzeria Uno. Now, have you ever tried theirs? And what is it? It sounds like you're doing a thumbs down. Okay.
Pizzeria Uno is downtown Chicago, right? And they have another Pizzeria Duo or Due. right?
Yeah.
And fine, whatever. It's another one of the cliche Chicago pizzas places,
Okay.
right, that claim to be the downtown
So what's the difference between theirs? Because see, I want to get the authentic thing. I probably just have to go to Chicago, but what's the difference between what they do and what is the good stuff?
There's a difference in sauces, right?
Okay.
There's a difference in like style of crust and how they do things. And here's what I would say: like the Lou Malnati's, if you're gonna do Chicago style pizza, and you can order these from their sites, right? You order them frozen.
Oh,
You either
get it
do
mailed to me? Uh-huh.
Giordano's, or you do Lou Malnati's. Now Lou Malnati's has a lighter sauce. It's a little bit more tomatoey, right? Meaning like chopped up tomatoes, stuff like that. It's a lighter sauce. Whereas Giordano's has kind of a heavier, thicker sauce, right? Now I tend to gravitate more toward the Giordano style, but forget Pizzeria Uno, right? If you're gonna do Chicago style and you want to have a battle of the Titans, you try a Lou's and you try a Giordano's. And here's the key thing: if you do sausage on a pizza, what you find very quickly, if you do not tell them to crumble the sausage in a deep dish pizza, you get a patty that's like that thick, and it's like a salt lick.
Oh,
And
wow.
so you want to tell them to crumble the sausage, unless you want a sausage patty, and that sucker is thick. So when I have guests in, like when Craig came out, and I take Craig on a food tour every time he comes in, I'm like, this is where we're going. And I'm like, we call it the we don't count calories tour.
Yeah.
And we, I do Italian beefs. I do like the beef combos, at Portillo's. We do the cheese fries. We do the milkshakes. I mean, we go around, we do the tacos. There's certain places that you want to hit, but pizza is a staple, and we always hit most of the time Giordano's when we come in.
Okay. Because unlike you, who's lived there most of your life, my full extent of being in Chicago or Illinois is being in the O'Hare Airport once in the 80s. So there you go. But so
Yes. No, you can order online, Giordano's or Lou Malnati. I would recommend at some point ordering from both, like have a frozen pizza and then bake that. And I'm telling you, man, that's your Chicago style pizza experience.
Now, I may have actually tried one of those because we did get a deep dish pizza, and that sounds familiar, about 2 or 3 years ago. And I will say, if it's one of those, it did taste really good. So I think I did have one. I think it was my wife's old work sent that out as a Christmas gift. So, but I'll double check with her. She's not here right now. So, but she would be able to tell me. She goes, oh yeah. So anyway, but I know how it is with the deep dish pizza, because the equivalent is like New York with, like, say, their bagels and stuff like that. And it's like, you can find a New York bagel outside of New York, but it is very difficult to find, and it's usually transplanted New Yorkers that just brought their recipe out, and they do it right. But so I get what you're talking about. So now, are you going to miss it?
Feel the same way about crawfish too.
Right. Yeah.
Which the old saying is, don't buy crawfish from a truck with an Iowa license plate.
Yes, I would not.
Now, the best place I've ever had crawfish, but it was in California, but they brought it in from Louisiana. So and it's a Cajun place that has lots of spicy food, jambalayas and stuff like that. So anyway. So are you going to miss it if you're in Florida? Are you going to be craving pizza all the time? Or are you going to, or are there any Florida delicacies you like?
So I like my wife and I will try all kinds of different stuff. And like if I need to get a fix, I'll order a frozen one and send that down. But there's so, like, Portillo's is down there, which is fine. Like, I don't even eat them. I got a Portillo's right down the block from me at the studio. You know how many times I eat there a month? Let's go with a year, maybe like 4 or 5. So it's usually when people come in town and they're like, hey, and I'm like, all right, let's do the Portillo's thing. So not really. There's not really a whole lot I'm in it. Like, I like doing all kinds of different things. And, even down there, I'll find the spots. That's what Craig knows when he comes up here. Like, we will find the spots. Even when we're out in California, we found this nitrogen ice cream place, this other stuff. And we went after dinner and I'm like, this is where we're going after. Yeah. And we both brought our families out. We did this nitrogen ice cream thing. And I'm like, how did you not know this was here? Yeah. And so, but it's, I like to explore.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask you a quick question
similar.
here
Go
about
ahead.
Chuck Jones.
Mm.
Why is it impossible to reach Craig?
Dude, it's Craig.
Because I'm going to be honest, it is easier for me to reach Leonard Maltin than it is to reach Craig Clausen.
So Craig is like Michael Jordan, right? And that dude puts the work in. He is doing so many things, and I'm like, I don't know how he does it all. But yes, he is a hard dude to reach. But that's just because I mean, that man's
Carol. So I asked Carol the same question. She's like, Kamden, welcome to my life. 24. Because I've been trying to get Craig, because Craig has said since the first time, ever since he's been saying since you appeared the first time that he would appear on Mark's podcast.
He'll get
like
on.
he can join right now if you can send him the link here. You know,
right? Be like, Craig, like, what time is it out there? 7:30. I'm like, Craig, jump on Zoom real quick.
Yeah.
I have a meeting with him tomorrow. I have to jump on, so I'll prod him a little bit for you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And where does he live?
He's out in California.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he could do that with me. I mean, usually I have difficulties when but I've had people from around the world. I mean, Kamden knows. I've had Amber
Keith
on here
Scott.
from England, and I've had Keith Scott from Australia, and of course Plastic EP from Australia. So it's like time is not an issue. You just have to coordinate it right.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Now, my next question, by the way, I have a question for you, Ben.
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot of Disney kind of Looney Tunes stuff, and I want to ask you one question. How is that even legal?
Well, for one, I'm not reprinting it. I'll put it out here now, and that's a good segue into the Star Wars Looney Tunes mashup stuff, which has since gone viral, which is odd in a great way. But here's the thing with Disney, and there are so many. I'm just putting it out there right now. I plan on being the first modern individual to merge the two licenses into official pieces. I don't know how it's going to get done. I'm not exactly sure what the entanglements are, but we're going to figure it out. And I plan on being the first artist that bridges the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes Chuck Jones world with Disney in some fine art pieces that nobody's put through before.
But by the way, I don't know if you've seen this, but online, and I have a suggestion for you about Star Wars and Looney Tunes. But now online, you would think that the Roadrunner could be like R2D2 because he goes beep, right? But I saw online it was like Tweety was his bird cage because it's shaped the exact same way.
It could be. So here, the Book of Boba Fett came out, and I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And about that time last December, right before it came out, I did two pieces. I did Double Duck Band, which was Donald and Daffy facing off in a one-man band situation, right? Because I'm like, what would be the logical thing right after seeing like Who Framed Roger Rabbit? This is their next film. And so instead of dueling pianos, it's dueling one-man bands. And that sketch did its own thing, and it's got close to 10,000 likes and like 100 and some odd comments on Instagram on its own, just kind of doing its own thing, which is awesome. And then I did a Mickey and Bugs in the Alex Theater, is where it's kind of encapsulated. It's got a little number 12, which is Chuck's birth year, and on one side it has Who Framed Roger Rabbit again, right? And then on the other side, it has Double Duck Band, the poster. Well, the Double Duck Band drawing is the one that, they didn't go. You see the Mickey and Bugs have the tickets and they're going to theater number 1. And then Double Duck Band is theater number 2. So I did those two. And because I wanted to do something like there seemed to me to be something cool about that. I have several that I'm doing with Mickey and Bugs. And maybe it's the taxi cab from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'm not saying, but I'm going to do some stuff that mashes them up. But that got me into this mashup thing. And it was like, I love this stuff and I like doing stuff that I love. And the gallery is like, the Chuck Jones gallery guys are phenomenal. And they like, I do the paintings, like, this one and all kinds of stuff. And then I do these sketch things and I just kind of go off the wall and over the cliff. And so when Star Wars hit when Book of Boba Fett hit was the end of December, I'm like, man, I did this Inktober stuff, and Inktober's a thing in October, and it's a whole thing about inking, doing a drawing every single day. Right. Inktober's become this whole viral thing from Jake Parker, which is great. So I do Inktober every year. And this year I mixed up some Looney Tunes stuff and some my whatever stuff. And I just, whatever prompt is whatever I felt like doing. And it wasn't like a theme like I've done before. And I did this, the last sketch in October, I called it the Book of Marvin Fett. And it was Marvin sitting on, all I had was, I'm like, man, it'd be hilarious if Bugs was the Mandalorian, if Baby Yoda was Tweety, and if Chewie, and I didn't know anything about the series other than Boba Fett's in it, and if Chewie was Gossamer, right? And then you've got Marvin as Boba Fett sitting on his throne. So I did that sketch, right? And what I would do is I'd just post these things on Instagram. And I had a decent following of some people, and people would start picking them up, and I'd get a email from the gallery, and they'd be like, hey, did you just post this? And I'd be like, I did. And they're like, somebody wants to buy it. I'm like, okay. So then they started saying, could you just, every time you post something, could you just send it to us so that we know? And I'm like, sure. And like, before I knew it, I didn't do a ton in Looney Tunes, maybe like half, 14, 15 drawings. Most of them are all sold. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was doing it, I enjoy doing that stuff. So by the time Book of Boba Fett came out and it was about to drop, I watched the first episode. I loved it. I loved the whole series. I don't care what the naysayers have to say about it. I enjoyed it. My buddy enjoyed it. And I'm like, man, I did this Mando Marvin, like steampunk Mando Marvin, and I kind of did some stuff, and some guys like tattooed it on themselves, which was awesome. And I'm like, okay, but really the Boba Fett design with Marvin seems to be like the right kind. I can mesh the two of them together, and I had to ship all of them out, but I kept this one. I haven't shipped yet, so. Oh wait, hold on.
Disappeared.
Yeah. Oh. Don't you hate that when it does it? Because then I have to...
Wait, hold it in front of your shirt. I think it works there. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
So this is like Django Marvin, right? With little baby. Well, anyway, I did these, and I would turn off my filter, but like I'm packing the house and we're getting ready to show it. So,
unlike mine.
Right? And I'm like, I'm not at my studio tonight either. So so anyway, I did the first sketch, and because I'm like, all right, I'll do like a sketch based on the first episode, and I did like Marvin's Cantina, and I had Porky the Pig as a Gamorrean, which totally made sense to me, and then I had I forget what the robot's name is, and he's behind the bar, and I'm like, all right, and it like people enjoyed that. I'm like, that's cool, and I was Instagram is where I like to play the most, and I was watching the Instagram reactions grow. And, where before I'd be stunned if I had like 10 new followers in a week, because I'd post something, whatever, you leave it there. And now like it was growing rapidly. And so I did another sketch. So the Wednesday it came out, I did the first one. And then Sunday I did a second one. And that went nuts. And so people started kind of picking on that. And I'm like, you know what? I love this series. I'm going to do 2 sketches for every episode. I'll do one on Wednesday when it drops, and then I'll do one on Sunday. That way, if there's a spoiler, if you haven't seen it by Sunday, right? And so I started in on that, and the second week was great. The third week was great, and they're getting thousands of reactions online specifically on Instagram. Well, by the time I wrapped the series, my following on Instagram had gone up like 10 times almost. Yeah. And I was getting a ton of comments, and I figured it out like after I dropped the last sketch, which was all of them. So I have Bugs as Mando. The idea was to try to do as many as Looney Tunes as possible. I was holding out on Taz because I thought I'm like, if they have Ewoks, that's it. And I was holding out on Pepe Le Pew and Penelope because that was going to be the Han Solo Leia thing. And then Daffy, I wasn't sure yet. So there are certain characters that I haven't used in this one. I am going to do one for the Obi-Wan series. I'm going to do another little, run of these mashups. But I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then they just started selling. And so I'd say, hey, I'd post it. I'd send it to the gallery and be like, here it is. And sold. And there's out of 15 drawings, sketches that are either 9x12, 11x14, and the last one is 14x17. 10 have sold so far, which to me was like, what? And then here's the craziest thing. Before I get to the really crazy thing. So I by the time I dropped the last one, I waited like a week, and then I wanted to see like what kind of reaction overall. And I tallied it up and I sent it to the gallery, and there were over 430,000 impressions on those 15 pieces.
Mm.
And then out of those 430 some thousand, there were like tens of thousands of shares, likes, comments, saves, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, holy crap, that was awesome.
Mhm.
And so I let the gal, I'm like, hey guys, here's kind of the vibe. I did a collector exclusive with these sketch cards. That's like a miniature version of every single piece. And then I hand numbered and hand signed, so every collector gets something cool. And I'm like, these are originals only. There's no prints. I'm not revisiting anything. Like it's, this is it. So it's one and done. Well, last week, my buddy texted me, like 2 weeks ago, actually. I get these guys after I did my final piece, and a whole bunch of Star Wars groups, and these dudes, Kyber Cave, and they reached out and they're like, hey, would you like to? We want to have you on the show. And I'm like, Star Wars and art and Looney Tunes, yeah. And then the guy who's the moderator of it is building his own Marvin the Martian Mando helmet, which I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, so I went on that show, and then I had other buddies of mine. I'm in a couple of Star Wars Facebook groups, and my buddies are in a bunch of others. And they would message me the post. They're like, you're in this group. I'm like, what? And I'd go look, and there's like 30,000 likes on the thing with like 8,000, 9,000 shares and like 1,000 some comments. And I'm like, right. And so that was nuts. And then on top of that, that was getting picked up all over the place, and it would just start sprouting in other groups. So this dude would let me know. He's like, dude, this is like the 7th time I've seen you today on a different group. And I'm like, oh, and they're just picking up my sketches. And out of the 15, they would post a bunch or some or whatever, Boba Fett groups, you name it. And it's going nuts. And like, it's 6 digits as far as like the pickup on all those groups of people actually liking, commenting, all that kind of stuff. Well, the cherry on top was one of my other buddies he screenshots and texts me a tweet. Rarely do I use Twitter. It's enough for me to use Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And so I'm really not on Twitter that much. And he texts me a screenshot on Twitter, and it's Daniel Logan. And if you're familiar with Daniel Logan, he's young Boba Fett from Attack of the Clones, right? Mm-hmm. And he tweeted out one of my pieces, and he's like, this is so cool and whatever. And I'm like, and he's like, young Boba Fett likes your stuff. And I'm like, what? Well, funny enough, some people got like my tag is Ben Olson _art, right? There's also a guy who's Ben Olson art. Well, Daniel Logan put Ben Olson art all one thing. And this guy got tagged in Facebook and other places. And it's hilarious because he's responding to comments and he's like, I'm not the guy. This is the guy, right? and then he would retag my thing, which was very nice of him. He didn't have to do that. And so I tweeted out to Daniel Logan, and so did my buddy. I'm like, hey dude, thank you so much for, tweeting all my stuff. This is really awesome. That's actually like, here's my actual tag. So then he reposted and he was like, I'm so sorry. Well, I'm like, dude, you're sorry, you're fine. And so he retweets, and then he tweeted out another thing, right? And I'm like Daniel Logan. I'm like, how freaking cool is that? One of the living Boba Fett's is out there, like loving the stuff that's going on. So then I did the sketch I just showed you, which was it's a father-son kind of thing, is what I named it. And Django and has purple ice cream, because we all know what happens with a purple lightsaber later on. And and then Boba Fett's Boba's got like a little red and then a little green scoop of ice cream, because the green is Luke's Jedi saber. So you can kind of see where that kind of comes in. And they have Cloud City Carbonite ice cream. I've got the little prices for 1 scoop and 2 scoop are the years that they came out. So 1980 is the 1 scoop, and it's $19.80. And then for $20.02, you can have 2 scoops. Wow. So yeah, right. And so sent that out, and I tagged him on Twitter, and I'm like, thanks so much for your tweeting this out, dude. Like, I appreciate the nods. This is for you. And then he went, like, I screenshotted that. It was hilarious. Retweeted it out, and it just went nuts.
Wow.
And then it was getting picked up again in the other groups. And I'm like, holy crap. So we're in the hundreds of thousands of views, comments, interactions with this series that started out from me being like, man, Boba Fett and Marvin, I could totally make that into something, right? Just having fun with it. And then it's become this thing. And so what I love about it is George Lucas, and here's the tie-in, right? Here's the tie-in between Star Wars and Looney Tunes. George Lucas has openly said that Chuck Jones was one of his big inspirations, right?
So is Hamill. Hamill's also a huge Warner's fan.
Hamill's a huge Warner fan, right? So guess what's going to happen when I start doing the Obi-Wan series? I'm going to tweet out to Mark Hamill. And so you have the influence of Chuck on, like you look at what his legacy is like, and Chuck's legacy continues to live on and grow and expand. Byron Howard, who just won another award for Encanto, directed that, Zootopia, all that kind of stuff. There's so much that Chuck's legacy, how many people he's influenced, and not just in the arts, but everywhere. And what I think is awesome is you see these Spielberg credits as well, John Lasseter. And so for me, George Lucas being inspired and then creating this entire movement, that is just, it's a thing, right? And I love being in it because it's just fun. So I have two of some of my favorite things, and the man who influenced all this stuff, including me, right, is it all comes back to Chuck. And so I love it. I love the mashup. I love the fact that the Chuck Jones Gallery guys just give me a wide berth and they let me just go crazy with whatever. And I'm super grateful for that, because what I've found especially in the comments that have come back, and I try to keep up as best as possible. The Facebook thing, I lost it. I couldn't. By the time I got 50 comments and trying to respond to people, be like, "Hey man, thank you so much," as I'm finding myself on different groups, I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
But on my Instagram, I try, and it's difficult because they cap it at 100. And man, if I don't hit that in an hour, less than an hour, half an hour, I'll hit 100. But if there's a comment in there, they may be 140 down. I'm not going to see that 40. So I try to spend a couple hours every week and hunt through my posts to make sure I respond to as many people as possible. But what I found is some really awesome comments of people that love both worlds as well. And especially with everything going on right now, and everything that we've been through in the last couple of years, I'm doing stuff that I enjoy doing, that brings me, I love art. I love all the facets of art, fine art, pop art, impressionism, you name it. I went to the Monet exhibit here when it was downtown. But I'm doing things that I love doing, that's happiness and joy, and bringing these worlds all together, and other people are finding that and making that something of their own also. And I love it, and I'd love just being a part of it. So it's a huge blessing, and it's Chuck's legacy and the impact that he's had on me. And I unfortunately never got to meet him, but I read his books. I obviously know the family really well, and I'm a part of the center there. I'm a part of the gallery. I'm a part of all the other stuff they're going. And so to be able to live in this and do this, especially with the guys like Linda's father, right, Craig's grandfather, I've got to touch the art supplies. I mean, I got all, and so for me, this is something that's extremely special, and that I feel very honored to be a part in. And so every time I go out and I sketch a little something or do whatever, I'm always kind of mindful of, Chuck, and then his just endless creativity of just go try this, and I kind of try to imbue that spirit in what I do.
I have a quick question for you. How long does it take you to do drawing? Because I remember one time when I was at one of the events, you drew something in my autograph book. Mm-hmm. How long does it take you to draw something?
So the stuff that I do for sketches, they usually take me a few hours.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. What about the painting behind you that you're using as your backdrop here? How long does it take to do something like that?
That was probably about 70 hours.
Oh wow.
Oh
Okay.
God. Mark, are you glad you have Mark, what kind of Instagram following have the Harveyville Ton Times gotten you?
I use Instagram so poorly. It's unbelievable. I don't even have a picture of myself on it. I have just stupid photos of things that I find amusing and I just stick them up there. And even those get like random, hits and comments and stuff like that. And I'm going, whatever, because I've never really embraced Instagram. I've always been kind of a Facebook guy. I was originally a MySpace guy. I don't really get Twitter either. It's not like I don't get it. I don't have a use for it.
Right.
I do promote like these podcasts. When the podcasts are done,
Yeah.
I'll put them up on Twitter and I'll put them up. I don't put it on Instagram. I probably should, but it doesn't have an automatic link there. So, but I put it on Facebook. I put it on LinkedIn of all things. And it's like I still get the most response from YouTube itself, where this video version goes, or on Facebook. So that's why I don't really. Sometimes Twitter, it depends on who the guest is.
Yeah.
Well, I found that for me in Instagram, like Facebook, I'll connect with people. I tune out a lot because they're, especially with politics and everything else, I kind of steer clear. There's enough drama in my daily life where I don't need that. So I filter it and I'll use it to, random stuff here and there. But Instagram to me was, so like when Tumblr was a thing, which I don't even know if it is still a thing, but that was like an artist playground. And that's where, I'm like, I want an inspirational source. And like, I know guys and gals that I really like their stuff and I'll pull from here. And Instagram to me is like, I have good friends that I connect with. But for the most part, almost entirely, it's good friends in something creative or something like, and then Instagram is my playground for that. So, and I'll be honest with you, I don't freaking know what I'm doing on Instagram either. I post some stuff, right? I post some stuff. I hashtag some stuff. I switched my account to a business account. I'll pay to promote things every once in a while, but it's just getting things out there. And I couldn't tell you why. There was no method where like, if you do this, you can grow your followers to whatever. No, I had like, I from where I was even in mid-December to where I am now was like night and day. I couldn't tell you. Like to me, it's kind of like not luck of the draw, because I don't believe in luck, but maybe some more relevant stuff, maybe whatever. And I find it, I like the business behind figuring things out. And they're like, okay, I'm like, well, if that worked, then what about this? And that's kind of the entrepreneurial part of me, is like using Instagram as a source to connect with, like, I find myself having more of a like-minded audience in there. And I don't use Twitter a ton. I just started with Daniel Logan. I'm like, maybe I'll change up my profile. I'm like, maybe that's a good idea, because this thing has been around since when Twitter started. I'm like, maybe it's time to update that.
Well, I use Facebook, but I also, what I do is if I have a blog post or something, I'll have like an app that will post automatically to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter automatically. I'll do that. Yeah, but I was gonna also ask you, the thing that caught my eye more than anything is the Spider-Man one.
Oh, the Wile E. Coyote.
I think that was cool.
Thank you. When stuff comes out, like I'm gonna do a Batman one with Wile E. Coyote in his bat suit, not a Batman suit, in his green bat suit, right? Because to me, it's funnier to have him as bat suit Wiley in what Chuck did. So, and then I'm gonna have him next to a Roadrunner, which is his Batmobile, right? But it's the like Plymouth Roadrunner. And so like when it came to like Spider-Man stuff, I'll be like, hey man, could you do like a crossover with Spidey and like Wiley and whatever Acme stuff? I'm like, yeah. And so like, I'm like, but what would it, like, if you put Wiley in a situation like that, does it make sense for him to be like in an Iron Man suit? And what? Yeah, because Acme could totally deliver that. Like a Doc Ock suit. Yeah, because that's totally Acme. Right. So like, and is he gonna totally screw it up? Absolutely, he's gonna screw it up, because that's the funny part. So like the dynamite that he gets trapped over his head when he's all entangled in the arms, it's gonna blow up. That dude's gonna get singed. And I had a blast. Like that one sold, I think, right away. But that one, I have a blast with that, because for me too, like there's something in like a little miniature story, right? So can you tell a one frame story? And then I get to play with these guys, to pull that off. So
I got a quick question for you also.
Yes.
I know that you've done some art for Hanna-Barbera stuff too. You've done some. You thought about combining Star Wars and like a Flintstones thing?
Yes. So I go back and forth between doing Star Wars or doing something like Marvel. And I think you could pull off a Star Wars, with Flintstones.
I think I'd rather see Star Wars and Jetsons.
That's what I was going to say. Get into Jetsons. But here's the thing with Jetsons is the gallery doesn't have the license for the Jetsons.
Okay. I didn't know that.
They've got Scooby-Doo. They've got
well, Scooby-Doo's not as fun.
No, but I'm like
Scooby's boring, so
I'm not, like the Hanna-Barbera stuff to me, like I did a Dino piece, and like even there, like if I'm going to get into Flintstones, I want to do something that nobody else has really done or looked at in a way that nobody else has looked at.
Here's one for you. Okay, this is how it will work for Star Wars. The Flintstone flyer. Use that in outer space, like being chased by the Death Star, or what? Not the Death Star, but the Imperial ships.
Actually, it could be really funny because
instead of X-wing fighters, you could have them doing the Flintstone flyer, and the phrase would be "We're going in," or something, into the trench or whatever.
Well, what's great about that is like
3 ideas for you. There we go.
Yes.
I would love to see it.
I will make sure to give you credit if you think about it. Like you take Stone Age and Space Age, they both start with S's. So but to have something that's so antiquated with so modern and then try to pull that off, I'm like, you're on to something. You boys are on to something. I'm gonna have to.
Well, I mean, that was kind of the whole point of the Ewok battle in Return of the Jedi.
I think the Flintstones would still work better because I guess Star Wars, is from a long time ago. I still don't understand why it's a long time ago instead of a long time in the future, but
hey, it's light years, right? So by the time it reaches us,
well, there's some people that actually say this is that the Jetsons is actually the show from the past, and that the Flintstones is the show from the future after the apocalyptic.
I've also heard it to where the Flintstones is just what's below the Jetsons. To where I guess the high-rise apartment
on land. Okay.
I was gonna say, it's like Middle Earth. Like, are we doing Middle Earth?
The poor people, they only have their Stone Age automobiles and everything. Yeah. They don't have the flying cars. That's funny. Now that I'm thinking about that, it'd be interesting to get the Flintstones in there. But the Jetsons is the obvious one. But I didn't know you didn't have the license
Now, of course, Mark has the same opinion of Scooby-Doo that I do. It's just a boring character.
I never liked it, unfortunately. And my sister liked it. When we watched it when it first went on the air. And I'd watch it because my sister liked it. And it's like the only early series on Scooby-Doo I liked is the new Scooby-Doo movies. And the reason why is because they had all the celebrity guest stars. So I love that series.
Mark, yes. You wanted to see Laurel and Hardy team up with Scooby-Doo.
I love that.
Yeah.
although as a kid, I didn't know that they had already passed. So I thought, how come they didn't get the real voices? It's like, because I'm a little kid. I don't know, because they did get the real voices for most of the characters. They didn't for the Three Stooges, but like most of the other ones, they did. Don Knotts, whatever.
Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah. And so I thought, surely they could have found Laurel and Hardy. I just saw them in a movie, not knowing that they had died 10, 15 years earlier. But anyway. Let me get a question in. Do you always have to do mashups, or you just prefer to do mashups, Ben?
No, I don't. The mashups to me are stuff that comes too. So like
Okay.
when I'm doing stuff like this, so I just did a piece for the gallery, and it was the 70th anniversary of Mark Anthony.
Mm.
And I did a piece called Bake Sale, and it's, to me, it was the story after the cookie fiasco, right? And Feed the Kitty. And so he's gotten over that, and now he's raising some funds. And so they bake these little canine cookies. And I mean, like Marvin the Martian's canine, and they're all frosted, and they've got little, Pussyfoot is sitting there on the Bake Sale, wood put together like little thing. And Porky's there with Rover, and they going to buy one. And then in the background is a very tiny Daffy Duck and his rabbit fire dog, thing peeking around because he wants one, and they're for dogs. So I'll do stuff like that. And like officials, like I have other things coming out. Maybe they're baseball related officially. And with certain teams, and other collaborations with other guys who I totally admire. And one in particular, which there's some things percolating on and some concepts going back and forth. And so I do stuff like that. And then I'll do like traditional, I say using the characters in more of the traditional form, but just coming up with my own stuff. So like scenic route, stuff like that. And then the mashups to me are, for one, you'll probably only ever see them in sketch form. Because that's not for me to go and paint and
70 hours.
Like, now there are certain things that I'm like, man, I would really love to paint that. And painting wise, and see that there's a difference too in like what the gallery wants. Like when I do paintings, I have to submit concept sketches. So like the 70th anniversary of Mark Anthony, I submitted my first concept sketch because they're like, hey, we'd like you to have you do the 70th piece. I'm like, awesome. And so I did one, and then that it hit, but it didn't totally hit. And then I did another one, and then another one, and then another one. And by the time I got to the fourth one, I got it. And so I do that, and then that gets approved, right? And then I go to paint. Sketches, I just go. I just go. And I don't have to have those pre-approved. They can just be whatever. So we did a Pepe Le Pew and Penelope, and I did one with the two of them. And it was this idea of, like, I had done a colored pencil sketch where she's dumping perfume all over him. He just looks like a miserable wet cat, right? And but he smells great now. And then so this piece was like, I called it Anything for Love. And it was the traditional sense of the two of them. So it wasn't a mashup, but it was more to give a middle finger at cancel culture as well. And so I have Peppy, and he's got his chocolates and his roses, and he's swooning her, and he's got the nose pin on as she's spritzing him. So he doesn't mind that he's like, whatever, I love you. You go, if that's what you need to make me smell better, that's fine. And they did a limited edition that lasted 48 hours. So you had to purchase one of two sizes. And then I would do a remark on the one, and in 48 hours, and they sold a crap load, like gone. And so I'm sitting there doing all that stuff. So that's the traditional stuff in the sketch. The mashups to me are like, stuff just makes sense. And I'm like, why wouldn't, like, what I'm going to do with Mickey, I'm putting Mickey and Bugs it's called Joyride. I haven't sketched it yet, but I'm going to, and it's going to be an ink and marker, and it's them in what's the name of the taxi cab? Like Benny the Cab, right? Yeah, Benny the Cab. So I'm putting them in Benny the Cab, and they're going for a joyride, and like Bugs is drifting Benny as like Mickey's hanging on for dear life, and they're around, and I'll put something in the back that's relevant. But it's stuff like that. I'm like, if they were cartoon, wouldn't they totally hang out and do that kind of stuff? Like, you've got the two kings of each network, or each studio, and yeah, they would totally do that. So I find the mashup stuff to just be like the series on Boba Fett. I did not intend to be 15 drawings when I started. I intended it to be like, here's the one that I think is fun of him in the cantina. And then I thought about it again. I'm like, well, this is actually fun. And then it grew.
Hey, if you had the ideas, why not?
and that's the best part, is like, they just kind of keep sprouting, and I can never turn my brain off. So I have a list of stuff, and if I come up with an idea, I'll write it down if I don't have the time right there to attack it. But like this one that I did with Django and Boba, Marvin the Martians, I'm like, I got to do it right now. And it was one of those things that it had to be in the moment. Like, things are happening, like the Batman that I'm going to do with Bat. It's got to be like relevant to what's going on. That's what I like about the mashup stuff for the most part. When I'm doing mashups, it's relevant to something that's going on currently.
Now,
I have a quick question though, by the way. Were you doing the mashups at all when the last time we spoke?
No.
yeah. Oh, I thought you did. I thought I remembered you doing them. You were just starting out doing them, I think, if I remember correctly. Because we talked a little bit about Marvel stuff. We talked a little bit about Star Wars stuff. And it seemed like you were talking about
I don't remember him
incorporating.
doing mashups though. I remember
I'll
you
have to
doing.
listen to the show again, but it just seems like I remember,
I remember you
but it
showing us
wasn't to
the
this
batch.
level. It wasn't to this level where you're doing it.
I remember you showing us.
Go ahead.
I remember you showing us the Baton Bunny thing that was behind you.
Yes.
Mhm.
So maybe I was just kind of like dabbling in a like, this would be funny, but nothing to what I'm doing
Right.
with it now. And what's cool is, again, like I'm the audience that's picking this stuff up and like making it their own, saving it, sharing it, commenting, all that kind of stuff. I love that. Like we're all nerding out on the same stuff, right?
Mhm.
And it's just and this thing, like my brain never shuts off. So to have stuff just kind of keep coming out, and again, usually it's relevant to something that's going on. A movie hits, a show, whatever, something's going on, to be like, that. Yeah.
So who gets the originals on these? Or you just keep them because you can't really sell them? Is that the case, or can you sell them?
So I don't. The way it works is anything that has to do with Hanna-Barbera Looney Tunes, and that includes mashup stuff.
Yeah.
If it like any of the Looney Tunes, I do not sell that.
Okay.
The gallery sells that because I have a contract with those guys.
I see.
And so I don't even take like commissions. If it's a commission and it has something to do with an IP that I have a contract with them for, I route them right to the gallery. I'm like, it's not worth whatever that little sum of money is to jeopardize a relationship like that.
Right.
So I got a free ride basically on my autograph book.
Did get a free ride on that. Actually,
autographs are a little bit different. I mean, it's like, geez, if you're doing a little sketch and stuff like that.
But like this stuff is, and anything in this element, especially if they ask me and they're like, hey, could you play in this world? And I'm like, sure. And then I'll send them something. I do not sell that. Like if it's something that I've already showed them specifically, like whatever it is, and definitely if it's Looney Tunes or Hanna-Barbera related, they get them all, and then they then sell those.
But I mean, I guess since they don't have a Jetsons license, you could do it.
I could do it. Well, even if I did, because they have the Hanna-Barbera stuff and I did like an original sketch, I'd be like, hey, here you go.
You said you don't have the Jetsons license. Is there any restrictions on Looney Tunes? Can you do any Looney Tune, past, present, or future, whatever?
Can you like do Tom and Jerry or some of like the MGM characters?
Yeah. Do those count as Looney Tunes nowadays? Yeah. Okay.
Well, no, because they have certain licenses. Like there's certain publishing houses. Like one has Marvel, collector's editions has Disney, stuff like that. Okay. I can do Tom and Jerry. I can do Flintstones. I can do Scooby-Doo under that kind of side of things. Especially because Chuck did the Tom and Jerry cartoons. So that, and then Looney Tune stuff is anything.
So it can even be like things like Inky or something that's not really politically correct if you wanted to, right? I'm sure. Yeah, I mean that's a Chuck Jones character anyway, but yeah.
And I just have one curious question. Nowadays, is like the Tex Avery characters, are they under the Tom and Jerry label, do you think? Like Droopy or
That's a great question. I don't know. And I'd have to ask. And I think too, part of it is, and I'll notice artists that pick up certain characters and they find like an affinity for those characters. So like mine, I love Wile E. Coyote and I love Marvin the Martian. Like there's something about that dude is persistent, and he tries and tries and fails and fails. And I love that.
Have you done anything with those two characters together?
Wiley and Marvin?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay. Because it'd be an interesting painting or drawing to have them like plotting something,
I stand corrected. Yeah. So the next big thing, and this is straight up Looney Tunes, that's coming that I started. I launched it in September of last year at an event out in California, and it's the steampunk world of Marvin the Martian, right? And it's called
yes,
it's called Conquer Earth. And the whole idea about like there was something I did they had a Marvin Madness last March, and I did like 4 Marvin sketches, 2 basketball related based on Michael Jordan stuff because that's my dude, and then 2 that were like these steampunk style drawings. And the steampunk thing was interesting to me because I'm like, man, I could like I'm looking at the characters in Canine and Marvin and Daffy, and like what if they were in the steampunk world, and like it just seems like it could fit, and it went nuts. And so I'm like, there's a story here. So Conquer Earth is a like 30 to 32 piece set that I'm currently working on, and it's planets A through Z. That includes X, even though it's blown up. That includes X, right? And then there's like an intro piece, a title piece, which is already sold. There's a middle piece. So I'm looking to do them in 3 batches of planets, and the whole idea behind it is Planet X blew up, right? And it was the shaving cream atom. Marvin was going to corner look at us, Mark. Look at these glorious beards. Right? If they wouldn't have blown up that shaving cream planet. And so Marvin
will have one eventually.
Right. So like
I just shaved before this, so I'm good.
All right. I'll take your word for that.
I used to shave. It's overrated.
It is overrated. And so Marvin's pissed because he was going to corner the market on shaving cream, right? That dude had it. He was going to mint it. That was his jam. And Dodgers comes in, blows up the whole thing, and now he's furious. Well, where does Dodgers come from? Earth. So what's he going to do? It's time for revenge, right? So Conquer Earth is all about Marvin the Martian and his crew of villains, which is K9 is his, loyal sidekick. You've got Wile E. Coyote, who's a steampunk Wile. He's the inventor of things, right? Of machines and whatever and all this kind of, and you've got the Muscle, which is Gossamer. And they're all done in steampunk. They all have steampunk. So you have those 4, and then you have Daffy, Bugs, and Porky, because all 3 of those have interacted with Marvin.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, other than Daffy interacting with Gossamer, those characters have intertwined. I've got a pin set. I've done all the hats and helmets that they wear as enamel pins. So collectors of the series get to pick every time they pick a piece up. They get to pick a new pin. There's 7 in total. But the whole idea is you go from planet A to Z. There's a different element on every planet, and he's got to collect these elements. So I've got aquanetium, right, which is like sticky compound of Aquanet hairspray, and then I've got liquid fire, which it's based off these little Hungarian peppers that my wife tried to kill me with, and she did it by giving them to my neighbor to make like ratatouille out of, and then was like, "Oh, you should try this, dude." When I tell you I wasn't crying, I was sweating from my eyeballs, okay? It wasn't tears. It wasn't tears. It was just my body was melting. And so so there's a liquid fire because you need you need something for like an explosive element. And then like I've got helios hevonium, which is a lead balloon, right? Because you need something to drop bombs with. And every planet has a different element to it. And it's about, and not all the characters show up on every cover. So it's like a comic book cover, right, for each one. And it kind of like gives you the intro onto what's going on in that world. So I've got one that's a dry ice planet. And Porky is the only one that shows up with the good guys. And he has totally gotten the villains drunk in this dry ice bar. Right. And there's 2 martini glasses next to Chuck's portrait because those 2 martini lunches. And then Willie Ito and his famous like too many martinis lunch that he passed out at Chuck's office with. Well, Willie Ito Coyote is passed out on the bar. So there's a whole series of this. And by the time I'm done, I'm gonna all of the originals, they're all in colored pencil with a couple of paintings in, and then I'm gonna do a book that's all about steampunk Marvin, and it's straight up like it's I guess a mashup between steampunk and Looney Tunes, but the Marvin and Wiley are in a whole bunch of covers on that. So yes, to your question, those 2 do play with each other.
It's too bad that any of these ideas you do, the steampunk or anything else, can't be spun off into actual animated cartoons, since they're making new ones, and or even comic books, because they still have an occasional new story in the Looney Tunes comic book and things like that. It's weird. Or even a feature-length movie, and instead of Space Jam, have
I
like
gotta
Mark
steampunk
will agree
Looney
with the same
Tunes
thing
movie.
with Mark will agree with the same thing with me. We've just never been Space Jam fans.
So I'll say this. First of all, thank you. I would love, like, when I think of a storyline of this, and if I'm going to do 32 or whatever it is pieces in a series like this, there's got to be something that weaves it in. Like, it's not just random stuff that happens. It's the storyline, right?
Yeah.
So Space Jam, to me, like the original Space Jam, I thought was cheesy. I thought it was great when I was a kid. I watched it like a few years ago with my other kids, and I was like, wow, I like that. And then I watched Space Jam. Wait. And then I watched Space Jam 2. And what a train wreck dumpster fire. Okay. And I'm like, all this is, and I can't stand LeBron James. I really can't. I couldn't stand him when he first got into the league, because I think he's just a whiny, egotistical, self-absorbed, entitled baby. Okay. Is he talented? Sure. But it's not like, Mark, when you and I watched, if you watched, and back in the day, whether it was Jordan, Bird, Johnson, Barkley, like there was a different feel about the league then to
Right.
where now. And to me, LeBron can try to, when you proclaim yourself as the king, right? It's like anybody saying like, well, I'm the greatest. No. If you're telling yourself to other people that you're the greatest, you're not the greatest.
Yeah. I'm not going to say either Space Jam film is like Oscar winning,
no,
Citizen Kane type stuff, but I will give the nod to the first one over the second one, just because, I've seen Michael Jordan, like that episode where he hosted Saturday Night Live. I mean, the boy can act, at least, LeBron can't act at all. And it's painful to watch on that level. Strangely enough, I did chuckle a few times on the second Space Jam, but it's not like it's great cinematography. Or cinema. I'm just like, I think it's more desperation that I want a feature-length Looney Tunes film that has new material. It's like, because it bugs me that there has never to this day been a feature-length Looney Tunes film that's all animated. The best we get is like those compilation films, the Looney Tunes Roadrunner film, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner film, or the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, those type of things, it's like, and they have archival footage, which is fine, but unfortunately it makes it stick out like a sore thumb, the new footage that makes those films painful to watch as well. So
and
I have to be honest, I didn't hate Back in Action as much as I dislike Space Jam. I'm one of the few people who actually liked that a little bit more.
I just don't like all the live action stuff, that's
that's exactly right. Exactly right. But I'm like, I agree with Chuck what he said about the Space Jam, though. What Chuck Jones said about the first Space Jam was that, you see, if it was my Bugs Bunny, he wouldn't need to hire some NBA star to fight against a bunch of monsters.
And see, and that's where I think the key is to this. I had somebody at another gallery, right? Not Chuck Jones galleries. It was another gallery I went to, and they were discussing like Disney and Looney Tunes and stuff like that. And they were like, well, like you could put Mickey and Minnie in any situation, right? And if you think about it, they're general characters. So you could really do, but you couldn't really do that with Looney Tunes characters, because it wouldn't make sense to put Wile E in whatever situation. And they're like, so, they were making kind of this thing, like kind of knocking it a little bit. And I'm like, hold on a second. And this is where I think the Space Jam, tie-in comes in. Or even the new films that they're doing, if you take the characters and you understand who they are, what Chuck did to develop them, the Chuck films are still my all-time favorite Looney Tunes animated films. And if you take those films and you understand the characters and who they are, you can put them in all kinds of things that make sense to that scenario. So to your point on Space Jam, and forget Space Jam 2, right? Wreck, burn it, blow it up. That doesn't need to ever happen again. But if you look at like the first Space Jam, or where they put them in those scenarios, they're taking characters, and to me it's lazy writing, and it's like, oh well, we have this IP, we should probably do something with it, because are they really wanting the money from the film? No. What do they want? They want to push more merchandise. That's where the money is. So they come out with another thing, right, and then put Bugs Bunny's face all over it, when instead, to your point, Mark, and I look at something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? You could do things that make sense with the characters, write a great story to it, animate the thing, right, and do something brilliant. And I don't think I don't think the studio right now is, I think it's more just like a stamp it, go.
Right.
And that's what's unfortunate to me, because these Bugs Bunny's a rich character. Daffy Duck. Right. Look at how Chuck developed these characters and how, their personalities came through, which is why we love the films the way we do.
Right.
Yeah.
I still think
your point about LeBron also was is Chuck always would say, if you read his autobiography, he keeps mentioning Friz Freleng films, mainly Freleng and Avery. Mm-hmm. Which the thing about that is, I always thought that sometimes I also think that the studios don't even look at the other directors. They might just look at, what the problem with Space Jam 2 also is that they seem to, at least with the first one, it almost is there's 15 minutes of Warner Brothers characters. At least with the first one, they're in mainly the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Because the second one, the Looney Tunes characters are almost in half an hour of the whole 2-hour film.
They're afterthoughts.
There's a bunch of other characters that aren't anything. I mean, they're all just, what'd you say, IPs?
Yes, no, that's it. And, I
it's
found
the IP film.
Well, and if you look in that when they're in arena, what did you find? I found myself going to pick out all the characters when they're, instead of paying attention to what was going on in the movie.
Yep, I did that
that's
too.
What it was. It was one giant intellectual property movie of all of Warner Brothers stuff.
Yeah,
that's it.
Now, if I had the reins of everything, the film I always wanted, and since you're a Chuck Jones fan, you would know this. There's enough material there in Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century and Hairway to the Stars to do something of feature length that would work. And you could still incorporate all the other characters, maybe in cameo roles, not starring roles, but somehow, because they did the Scarlet Pumpernickel, we can go there too. And I think that's also a Chuck Jones one, isn't it? Yep. So there, those three, it's so you can do something, it wouldn't, and it doesn't have to be a parody of Star Wars or Star Trek or anything that's gone before. It can be just generic science fiction film, but with Looney Tunes and no live action people in it at all,
No. Yeah.
I mean, they were able to make a whole half-hour television series out of Duck Dodgers, so why can't they make a whole movie out of it?
I don't know. And they have made feature-length films by Disney with all Disney characters and no live action people. So there's proof that even though these are short subject characters, they can make a feature length if the story's good enough.
Well, and I think you have enough personality in those characters to where character arcs would make sense. You could bring something from beginning to end and not have it, just be one long commercial for why I should buy another t-shirt with a Bugs Bunny face on it, but something actually meaningful, in there. And I agree with you.
However, I think that certain characters don't work for an entire 2-hour film.
No,
I think the Roadrunner.
I agree with you.
I think the Roadrunner or Pepe Le Pew probably would not work for 2 hours.
No, but I think Mark, in your reference, you got Marvin can, when you mix that ensemble with Marvin, Bugs, Daffy, Porky as a sidekick, there's certain characters they can hold their own and they can be as the staple. And I agree, then you bring in the cameo stuff if you want to, or you surround, with secondary things, which is fine because it just enhances whatever the storyline is.
As an example, if you wanted to get Roadrunner and Coyote into the film, somewhere along the line they travel to a planet that's just a desert planet, like a Tatooine, and there they are zipping around, just chasing each other, something like that. And you wouldn't even have to make mention of it. You just see it zoom, zoom, and everybody and go, meep, meep, and everybody would laugh, and there's your appearance. They're in the film, and
Yes, I agree. Like I would love if they tackled it in that way, and you bring a really good writing team in.
I could write the script.
You write the script, like you find the humor, because what I love about what Chuck would write, and how they would do things is they would write to make like if they didn't laugh, it wasn't funny, and they weren't dumbing it down to the audience either, which is what I find a lot that goes on, in the newer stuff, is it's a dumbing down of things. Like it's playing to the least common denominator. When I look at the original films that Chuck's done, I laughed as a kid, but I'm laughing at the action that's going on, right? And I get all that, and then when I get older, I understand all the other references that are going on.
Yeah.
And if you are going to write a good Looney Tunes script, whoever does it, don't do this bit that they tend to do with Looney Tunes that they have done for the last 40 years or 50 years is, kind of like, hey, this is that joke again. Get it? It's like, it's like, just do the joke. You don't have to say, here's Bugs saying, "What's up, Doc?" again. Get it? And it's like, that's kind of how Looney Tunes does things nowadays, and it just easy stomach, don't turn over now. There we go. So that's my reference to that,
I think that, it's like they want to play in the same gags, and I'm like, the same 15 gags over and over and over again. They want to play, okay, well, Daffy's, Daffy.
Well, they can do the same gag, just do it. I mean, they didn't do it back in, it's like you've seen like the chimes or whatever, the da 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 da, it's like 10 different cartoons. The same thing happens every time, but it's not like the 10th time they go, "Hey everybody, remember when we did this gag in the 9 other cartoons?" They just do it again. It's like, it's funny because they're not aware, even as their own characters, that we've done this before, and it makes it funnier in a certain way because, it's
also when Clampett or Jones would use Powerhouse, each time they did it, they were smart enough to do it a different way. They were smart enough to experiment a different way.
Well, I think what's missing too is, and I know this because when Craig and I were at the Disney Animation Studios, and we were talking to something like Byron, he mentioned some things that I forget who the head story guy was that we were talking with, but they grew up on this stuff. They were influenced by Chuck and his timing, like, good night, man. Can you, Chuck's whole thing of that's one frame too long, or like, this is how long this happens. And I think it's what I like about Pixar shorts, and the fact that that's a training ground for future directors and to play with content to develop your storytelling abilities. And I think that's lacking. Like when I look at the new Looney Tunes stuff, and like that Dynamite one they had with Elwood, or Daffy and the cement thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, like it's just there's something that's missing. And it doesn't have that quality of stuff that you're looking at, like, is someone writing that thinking that's funny for them? And then and you look at Chuck and what Mike Maltese, it's intelligent humor. It's not just slapstick stuff. Like, there's slapstick stuff in it, but it's intelligent humor. And then not only that, but the oversensitivity, like, you can't have guns. Dude, I grew up on this stuff, right? Yeah. I got guns. My family's got my dad brought us up on gun safety and everything. Like, did my entire generation, your entire generation, did we grow up shooting each other? No. Did we grow up hitting each over the head with hammers? Maybe I did it once or something, but but like there's certain things that like you understand, like the humor in it, and I think too, as a lot of that stuff gets removed, you're just kind of like, okay, like
The closest that happened to me when I was a kid is I was watching like Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour on the weekend or something, and my dad was sitting there, and I said, "Where do you buy dynamite anyway?" And I guess you could at one time at the hardware store, but I don't even think you can do that now. And it's like it's not like it's easy to come by, and I'm
Yeah,
not talking about like
what
just
kind of
general
child can
fireworks,
lift an anvil?
Yeah,
What kind of child can lift an anvil?
right.
I find like I have a 3, a 5, a 16, and a 17, right?
Yeah.
And my 16 and 17-year-old, I they love the original Chuck Jones stuff. It's still funny to them. My 3
Right.
and 5-year-old love the Chuck Jones stuff. It's funny to them. And when they watch the new stuff, like the closest thing I'd say to, like, for me, like that type of humor where it's kids love it as much as adults do, is like a Phineas and Ferb. I think those guys wrote some fantastic cartoons. And like like that, I get the humor as an adult, but I can also enjoy, watch my kids enjoy it. And that's the thing, like with this where we're at, in my kids, and watching them appreciate that. And then I'll, other parents will be like, I can't believe you let your kids watch that, the violence and the whatever. And I'm like, really? I'm like, would you like to dissect what's currently going on in culture that you're allowing your kids to listen or watch, and then let's compare it to this?
Right.
So, the oversensitivity to it, I'm like, get over that. Just get over it.
I think that the whole thing with that, there was a lot of humor also that was topical, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it's topical in a good way too. Like, my favorite Warner Brothers short of all time, and I've told this to people before, is Bob Clampett's The Great Piggy Bank Robbery. I think that short is the equivalent to What's Opera Doc, because Jones was a very cultured guy and Clampett was just pure zany. And I think that, we don't need to have, like, and there's a scene in it where, I think the scene is where, there's a scene where and I saw it the other day, and there was a scene on TV, and there was a scene where, where the planes shoot off of the head.
Mm-hmm.
Flat Top's head.
Yeah, Flat Top's head.
Yeah.
They cut off that scene because he's like smoking a small cigarette. And in the scene, if you notice, the cigarette in his mouth is not even there. So all you see are these planes flying up, and he's still bombed by the planes. He can still pull out the machine gun, but that little cigarette in his mouth somehow is bad, I guess.
Well, and that's why, I had a discussion from time to time, especially because like Looney Tunes will come up, or obviously I do this stuff, so people ask those questions, and I'm like, think of how you, like, I think people often forget as they grow up now, like, oh, we have to, like, you don't have to saran wrap everything, you don't have to bubble wrap it all, like, let it breathe a little bit. And then, by the way, parent your child, right? And if there's something going on that you're like, maybe that's not the best thing to do, then parent the child. But you're not going to get that from these films where there's, some, like, again, some topical. I think it's good to, like, understand, like, culturally all right, so what was going on? Because there's some references that I didn't get, that I have to be like, oh, that was what was going on in history back then, or that's who that TV personality
Clark Gable might be, and, like, all the references in, like, A Hollywood Steps Out by Avery, or
right. So, like, there's certain things I'm like, okay, but guess what? We're going to be doing that until the end of time, because, like, another generation after this is going to be like, you guys did what in 2022? Like, so it's a constant thing, and I think there's much made of that,
and people forget that. Yeah,
there's certain things I get, like, if they censor Magical Maestro, they're gonna cut the Chinese gag. I get that, because they've been doing that since, like, the late 50s. Since those things aired on TV, they've been doing that. I get that part. But, I mean, it's all the little stuff that can't, like, I think the censoring started okay, but I still think that there's a better way to play it uncut.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be, honestly, I don't think there should be any censorship of it all. Now, if you want to put something at the beginning that says, hey, there's certain things in context or whatever, like Disney does that with some of their films, I don't have an issue with that, because things were different culturally, but to send, like, we get into a really tricky area when we start to censor art, music,
Mhm.
comedy, right? And whatever, and I literally just had this conversation on a show last week where the cancel culture stuff came up, and we get into a very to me it's a cannibalistic mentality. And
Mhm.
5 years from now, someone's going to get offended by something that happened today,
course.
somebody got offended by something, and it'll just continue. So
Right.
if you want to give context, fine, give context, but the censoring of it, nah.
I talked to our friend Scott Shaw one time, and he and I were talking, I think on an interview. I was just interviewing him for a project, Mark.
Mhm.
And he and I were talking about The Simpsons because obviously he did The Simpsons comics, and he pointed out about Apu, The
Right.
Simpsons. He says, well, he says, until this one little thing came up, y'all were fine with it before, and you were fine with it for 30 years, 31 years, and now the 32th years, and somehow you think that the whole thing's been a problem since day one.
Right. No, that's not how this works.
Yeah. The first thing I ever noticed was in the 70s. I was watching Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show or Roadrunner Hour, or whatever they called it. And it was about 1975 that they suddenly started censoring the explosions and the aftermath and stuff like that. So you might be able to see the explosion, but you didn't see the aftermath anymore, which I thought made it even scarier than before when they just would show them like all dark and blown up, or whatever. And the one, and you two probably know the title of this one. I think it is another Chuck Jones one. What's the name of the Bugs Bunny cartoon where they're constructing the highway and
Well, there's two. There's two. There's the Chuck Jones one, Homeless Hair, then there's the Kimskin one, Hot Cross Bunny.
It's probably the Homeless Hair, but it's the one where they eventually make the freeway around his rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's Homeless Hair.
Yeah. Okay. So that one, they used to show uncut until about 1975, and then they started cutting it, and they cut it to the point where you couldn't even understand what was going on. It was like, and I would go, like there was other ones that they cut, like long-haired hair. They cut out like, the part where Mr. Jones, and then he opens it up and stick a dynamite that blew up. If you cut that scene out, the cartoon still makes sense. It's just a shorter cartoon, so it's okay to cut that part out if you had to. I was kind of objecting.
You really don't have to though.
Well, I mean, if you're cutting it for time versus whatever. But in the case of that other one, all the cuts made it make absolutely no continuity sense, that you just had random scenes, and then the last scene is just the freeway going around Bugs Bunny's rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, I guess that was a cartoon.
There's like,
it's like,
if you've ever seen the Hunting trilogy cut, the thing lasts about about a minute.
Seconds.
Yeah. The whole thing, because they cut out the scene, and all you see the whole time is Daffy's bill flying around.
Yeah.
You don't see any gunshots.
No.
You don't hear the gunshots.
Yeah.
So I did a painting, because rabbit fire is one of my all-time favorites, and I love rabbit seasoning too, but rabbit fire is my all-time favorite in that trilogy. And so I did a painting, and where they're in the forest, and it's what to do with the gun, Doc, right? And he's looking at Elmer, and Elmer's kind of got this kind of confused, like, wait, what? And Bugs is just leaning on his mailbox, and I did that painting, right? And I for the life of me, I can't remember what I call it. Oh, it's called Shoot Me Now, right? and I kept the gun in, and we released it last year, and I had like multiple people come up to me and be like, I'm so glad you kept the gun in. And because they're like, why all this sensitivity to whatever. I'm like, if you know me at all, you know that that's not going to happen here. So
I think that someone told me a story of when the gallery first opened. You know that piece that they have with the Chuck Jones characters as like a parody of The Last Supper?
Yes.
Somebody told me a story that when the gallery, I think it was Carol who told me the story, or actually no, it may have been Craig. When the gallery first opened, they hung that outside the door, the walls, they got a bunch of conservative Christians come up to them and say, no, and like these conservative Republican activists started saying that this gallery is like defacing God. They had to take it down or something.
Wow.
Like if you look it up, it actually made a headline.
You, you should go, Ben. You should go the full extreme. Just do a painting of like dynamite, and plunger and rifle and all sorts of things, and just subtitle it "The Real Stars of the Looney Tunes."
Yes, every Acme explosive device.
Yeah.
Yes, put it all in one. Yeah, I find like there's the humor that comes with things, so I go back to a Chuck quote, right? And it's when he says, always take your work but never yourself seriously. And I think to a good that you got to live by that, right? Like and I work hard, I take my work seriously, I get to play and stuff I love doing, but I put the work in. But the moment I start taking myself too seriously, and I think a lot of people do, they take themselves far too seriously. And it's like, guys, we're not that big of a deal. Like none of us are that big of a deal. We treat others like they're a big deal, and that's great, but we don't treat ourselves like we're a big deal. And then because then we get offended by everything, and then I can't believe you did this and blah blah blah. You know what? Stop. And so like that Chuck quote sticks with me daily, to always take your work but never yourself seriously. And I think that idea, which is what he imbued in all of his work, in his films and his crews and everybody that worked with, like that to me is a lasting legacy on something that just keeps getting passed down, and something I would love to see more of. And like when I'm mentoring students, confidence over cockiness, that kind of stuff, like never take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously, and let's get out of this always offended thing, like just create. I just want you to create.
There is one piece of censorship I actually kind of liked, where I actually was fine with it, whereas it was Fresh Hair, the Freeland cartoon. Now at the end of the cartoon, there's a blackface gag. Rather than cut the blackface gag out, they cut the scene out. But when the end title comes on, they play the song that they sing as the end title music.
Dixie.
So where you're not missing a thing of audio, you're just missing the final image.
Right.
Which that actually I thought was a smart idea, to actually spend the extra money to actually precisely make sure you're not missing anything.
I like for all I got to Mel Brooks. You want to get offended? Like all the people that want to get offended, I'm like, let's watch a Mel Brooks film together, because I'm gonna laugh my tail off.
Yeah.
Especially Blazing Saddles.
That's what I was gonna say. Blazing Saddles. I'm like,
we're producers. That even is offensive at a certain level too. But
it's yeah. But to have there again is a thing of like, you got the white guy writing the black guy's parts and the black guy writing the white guy's parts, and they're doing it together and they're finding it hilarious.
Yeah. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head when we were talking earlier about making a feature-length Looney Tunes. It's like, this is the key thing that they don't do when they make new Looney Tunes, is that they should be writing for themselves. They should have a team of writers that are good comedy writers that probably grew up with this stuff, and write what they would feel is funny. Not necessarily write the same gags that have been done 100 times before on old Looney Tunes, or put all these topical current references, because a lot of times that's what a lot of Looney Tunes gets bogged down with, is those two things. It's repeating old gags and getting bogged down with, oh, we better do some 2020 references because nobody will get this anymore. And so they'll put like, I don't know, Adele in the cartoon. And so like in 5 years when she's washed up or something, like, who, or Taylor Swift or whatever, and it's like, so I don't think that's necessarily the route to go. I mean, the only reason they did movie cameos way back when is because Warner Brothers
meant to show once.
Well, Warner Brothers was a big top studio. Those were their big stars at the time. I mean, they did put other studio stars in their films, but I mean, it was all, they were there, they used the Warner Brothers Orchestra. It was all there. The stars were there. Humphrey Bogart was there while they were still making those cartoons. So it's like, it was kind of a nod to just your co-workers basically. But nowadays when you put just a random like pop music reference or random TV or movie star that has nothing to do with Looney Tunes, even putting LeBron James, it's like, it's so meh, because it doesn't fit nicely.
Well, and I think people feel that, like, you can feel that it just doesn't fit,
Yeah.
where it's
I
like
think
you're trying to shoehorn it.
no, I think also, in fairness, these are a much better step than the sitcom was, or that Lunatics Unleashed thing was.
Don't even get me started on that.
The only thing I can say to defend things like Lunatics Unleashed or something like that is I used to say,
Don't even do it.
At
Don't
least they're trying. That's the only thing that kind of came across. At least they're trying something different.
Are they?
Doesn't mean they're succeeding.
But don't you think that's a little too different?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the only thing I thought at the time. I didn't really care for it, so it's like, yeah. But anyway,
What is it like? And I also think that this is just me, and I get that they need a female character, but I never really considered Lola a Looney Tunes character. You need a female character in there. I get why she's there, but I mean, her whole motive was to create merchandise in Space Jam.
Yeah. Well,
and I also think that they should stop hiring comedy writers and hiring more animation writers. Like people like Mark Evanier, who Mark and I both know, who specialize. Now, there are people like Mark Evanier who specialize in both. That's fine. But like, stop hiring sitcom writers to write cartoons.
Although it's funny you say Evanier, since he wrote for Welcome Back, Kotter years ago. But anyway.
Yeah, but Evanier was also writing for comic books.
Yeah, but Evanier writes for everything. So, I mean, he's not necessily the best example.
I think he's written Broadway, too. So.
Yes. I think he's really Stephen Sondheim. I don't know. Anyway. I don't know where we're going with all this. So, but we
what did you say? Hey, I told you we'd have enough to talk about, though.
We did. We've gone over an hour and a half. So it's like, so do you have any final thoughts about anything, or you just want to promote your move and your new location and everything again, or what do you want to do?
Well, I'll say that, I love having these conversations with you guys because I find them very robust, and it's usually topical, and then it dives deep, and then you bring it back. Kamden knows more about this stuff than I will ever know in 5 lifetimes, which is why when you're like, "Hey, remember that film?" and I'm like, "He'll know," and he did.
Yeah. And I didn't remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon. I've seen 1 billion times, and it's like,
no, that's good. Yeah. But like I love doing this stuff. This to me, Mark, Kamden, the same. Although you're way younger than we are. We grew up on this, and the fact that it still influences things, and specifically Chuck and what he did and how he did things, which is why I'm as passionate about the nonprofit and giving back and getting families just to get creative again, because it not because Chuck did it, but Chuck would go out and do those things. Chuck would mentor people. Chuck would do that. And for someone who I unfortunately never got to meet in person, but who had a great influence on me because I would read his books, I would watch his films, and I would check stuff out. This to me is just a high privilege. So to get to share that with other guys, who grew up and love this stuff just as much, is always an honor.
You're one step removed. I met him.
Aha!
I met Frizz too, so I was lucky.
Well, there you go. You doubled on me then. Yeah. I'm down.
But then I know people. I met Bob Clampett. It's like, well, it's like,
yeah. We know people who met Tex Avery too, which is an even bigger blow.
Exactly, but hey, everybody has their things up their sleeve of who they've met and who they've dealt with. But Chuck Jones was very nice. He's very quiet. He was wearing a cowboy hat. It was at one of the Warner Brothers stores. I think I said this in the last podcast, but in San Jose, California. Long line there to see him, but we all just stood in line, and he was signing like anything and everything basically. But it was a good show, and Frizz was a totally different show around the same time, early 90s or late 80s or something like that, and he was very soft spoken, but he was older because everybody says he was like Yosemite Sam. Well, maybe he was when he was younger, but he's pretty mellow by the time I saw him. So anyway, on that note, so what should we expect from you? How long are you going to take to move, and then kind of promote how to get in contact with you, and where to see you, and if you're making any appearances?
So I've got benolson-art.com is my site for all the stuff that I do, gallery wise, Chuck Jones, all that kind of stuff. I'll usually put appearances up there. I've got a big draw coming up with the Schaumburg Boomers for our Chuck Jones Center for Creativity on June 18th. Which is a little ways out, but the steampunk series, this whole Conquer Earth thing is a beast, and that is going to rock 2022. So that's my big thing for this year. And how many pieces? I'm sure there's going to be stuff sprinkled in. I'm sure as Obi-Wan series comes out and Mando season 3 at the end of the year, I guarantee you there's going to be some mashup stuff. So I play on Instagram, benolson_art, and that's where I find the most richest interaction. So you can check out the site, you can check out Instagram, and then the backyardexperience.org is my nonprofit. That's what hosts the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity Chicagoland.
Okay. Kamden, anything you want to promote, or you just want to say that you're part of Cartoon Research?
Yeah.
Any new articles coming out from you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Spring break, hopefully I'll have time, which is next week. So
all right, cool. All right, but you can always bring Ben back, try to get Craig up here, try to get some of the other people
if I can reach Craig,
or anybody else you've said that this
is email number 2 to Craig.
Okay.
Now.
All right, but anyway, it's a pleasure speaking with both of you again, and we'll have to do it yet another time, maybe after you're all established in Florida, and you can tell us how things are going and what new projects you're working on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, man.
All right, and that wraps up yet another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast with my special guests Ben Olson and Kamden Spies.